a biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
At the best of times, the media has to manage the boundaries between informing and sensationalising. Over the last 10 weeks, Australia and the world community has gone on the roller coaster ride of the criminal murder trial known as the Mushroom Murders. During these 10 weeks, those boundaries of informing and sensationalising have been put to the test at an entirely different level than our media has seen in a long time. The news broke earlier this week of a guilty verdict, and like wildfire, the news surged in Australia and around the world. Christian commentator David Robertson is our guest today to share his thoughts in the afterglow of this massive global story. David writes for newspapers, magazines, and is the author of a number of books, including The Dawkins Letters and Engaging with Atheists. He's also the minister of Scots Kirk Presbyterian Church in New South Wales. He's also the insightful writer of the blog called theweeflea.com. His latest book is called Seek. Welcome back to 2020, David Robertson.
Yeah, nice to be back with you, and nice to have someone different from Neil for a change. I'm utterly shocked that you have someone in the studio wearing a maroons shirt.
Oh, let the shock set right in.
I feel this is unnecessarily provocative.
Well, I feel wonderfully gratified by the fact that you're wearing a blue shirt this morning. Hey, David, it's great to have you with us in all reality. And look, tell us what you make of this whirlwind that's been this media story.
Well, do you know, I'm an outsider. I'm a Scotsman, and one of the things I knew about Australia was the dingo baby case. You know, Lindy Chamberlain.
Yes.
It kind of that went around the world, and this one reminds me of that because all around the world, my relatives back in Scotland, friends in the US and England and elsewhere, are saying, "Oh, what do you think about this? What do you think about the Mushroom Lady?" And it just intrigues me, you know, why this particular case has received so much publicity. And I wonder, it's a little bit like it's a courtroom drama, a murder whodunit. You know, when you watch a train wreck or a car wreck or something, I guess there's a fascination with that as well. But I can't really work it out. For me, I had no particular interest in the case. I just thought it was really sad. I think it's really horrible what she's been found guilty of. And, you know, there's another intriguing side aspect as well, is the involvement of the church. And there was a church minister, you know, and as a church minister, I often go to people's homes and accept hospitality, you know. And of course, there's a macabre side as well. I mean, there's numerous memes and jokes and so on about, mushroom pies. And actually, the thing that also got me was also intriguing is I think it's a Japanese cook based in North Shore of Sydney, who my wife absolutely loves. She put out a public piece saying that she was disgusted that the poisoner had used her recipe for beef Wellington. So, wow. I mean, there's so many fascinating things about it. It's obviously extremely sad. I don't really think it's a joking matter, but I am really curious as to why this has garnered so much attention and, you know, news bulletins interrupted and all that kind of stuff.
It's interesting when a story grabs the public attention so much that it penetrates all the way down into what they call, in online terms, meme culture, where the story becomes crystallizable, if that's a word, in a single picture with a few words. There's been quite a lot of that, even with this story around the world, David.
Yeah, there has, and I guess it lends itself to that. You know, I mean, who going to a restaurant, you know, this weekend and they get offered beef Wellington or something, you know, or mushrooms. They're not, you know, people will make all different kinds of jokes about it. And I wonder, you know, whether, you know, how healthy that is. But yeah, it's Australia. You're famous for having the Mushroom Lady and the Dingo Baby and Rolf Harris. I mean, there must be other reasons you can be famous, you know. it's the fascination of our culture, I think, with evil. Have you noticed this in movies that it's the bad guys are always the more fascinating? You know, I think of was it the Kevin Costner version of Robin Hood, where Alan Rickman, as the Sheriff of Nottingham, absolutely stole every single scene,
It's true.
as the bad guy. And what is this that's so attractive about evil in that way? But it's also interesting, there's war in Gaza, there's war in Ukraine, there's civil war and famine and so on in Sudan and Ethiopia. There's so much going on. And yet this one case of, well, I was going to say one murder, but 3 murders, it has dominated the headlines. I mean, it's incredible.
It's a saying in media, for at least the newspaper print business, if it bleeds, it leads. It's got that sensationalism factor about it that when there's something catastrophic or something destructive, it has the ability to just garner people's attention, to have them looking in. And you were talking just moments ago about the fascination with evil. I mean, you can think of the Batman movies and Heath Ledger's character. You see it on the back of cars now. Why so serious? And there's that penetration of those bad thoughts that go in. Why do you think it resonates like that with popular culture?
Well, I think sometimes because goodness is portrayed as unrealistic. So when you get goodness, it's kind of Disney-esque. It's kind of, otherworldly. And evil is portrayed as something that we know, that we see. And I think, much more biblical view would be to see every human being as both good and evil, that we all have a darkness within us, the heart of darkness, but we're all made in the image of God, and we have the image of God with us as well. I think the other thing about this that, I would want to pay tribute to the Kurumbara, I think I pronounced that right, I hope so, Baptist Church, where the pastor belonged, and they put out a notice talking about Heather, Dawn, and Gail, and it's a lovely notice asking for privacy, saying they've been through enough, that the families, the Wilkinson and Peterson families have been through enough. And I just thought it was a lovely, gracious testimony of really what thousands of churches in Australia are like. They're small, they serve their communities, they seek to get on with life, worship the Lord in the midst of tragedy. And I think in all of this, their behavior has been quite extraordinary. The fact, I don't think the woman would have been convicted if it wasn't for the fact that the pastor survived. Amazingly, he survived. And was there and was able to testify. And I think it was his evidence that really convicted her. Yeah,
it's interesting. We're talking here about the church stepping in and having a voice and bringing a moment and a voice of reason into the midst of all of the hysteria. It really was a feeding frenzy. Different outlets looking for different headlines. At one stage, even the names of the innocent minors who were related to this case, they were released into the media, and the media then had, that particular outlet had to quickly follow up and retract and issue an apology. How do you see it that the media, with their sensationalism, has a deeper impact in shaping the thinking of society? Like, what kind of knock-on effects come from the constant feed of trying to snatch for headlines?
Well, I think so. Let's go back to the Lindy Chamberlain case of the dingo baby thing. I mean, in certainly in the Meryl Streep portrayal of it, and I think that it was pretty accurate that. It was the media that fed the feeding frenzy, and the film portrayed people in dinner parties in Sydney, arguing at their dinner party about whether she was guilty or not. And to me, that's exactly the same as happened here. I mean, I remember sitting down not so long ago with my wife, and we were just saying, I wonder if she did it or not. I think, why are we sitting at our dinner table talking about a murder case about which we know nothing, but we've only been fed stuff by the media, and I think we need to be really careful. And I think there's another more prurient side in this as well, that with the influencers, with, everyone trying to get their particular video or podcast or whatever to go viral, then you push for more extremes. So I write, for example, regularly for Christian magazines and so on. And there's one in particular, Christian Today, I write for. And initially I was writing very general stuff, things. And, they, like many of these sites, they depend on money from advertising, and the advertisers pay according to the number of people who actually read it. So this whole idea of clickbait and stuff, and I knew that if I put up something like, bishop found in gay sex brothel or whatever, that it would get far, far, far more clicks than if I did something like young mum, establishes new Sunday school movement somewhere, or or I talk about something more biblical, and that's on a Christian side. Now, and you see that happening in other places as well. So there's a tendency always to look for the sensational. We find that, without getting into all the things about climate change or not, it intrigues me enormously that I look at weather maps from the 1970s in the United Kingdom, and they show, a hot temperature of 30 degrees and it's just sunshine. And now it's flames and blazing red, because we're all burning.
It's an interesting development, that, isn't it?
It is. It's very interesting how all of that is done. And so, you think about the headlines and how it's done. And I think we as Christian media, we have to be careful not to fall into that as well. We sensationalize things. And I just don't think it's helpful, because people then don't believe us. It's like if you cry wolf all the time when there really is a wolf, you're in trouble.
Yeah, correct.
And I would say the same when you're talking about good things. You always say, our church is absolutely wonderful. This particular church has seen renewal and revival, and it might have seen a couple of extra people,
Yeah.
So when the real thing happens, how do you report it? Because you've got no language left. So I think the use of language here is very important. And as I say, I think this case in particular shows the fascination with evil. It also, to be honest, it's the human side as well, which many of us can identify with. My local newspaper here in Newcastle, I cannot believe it, but today it even had an opinion column where somebody's speculating on how often they would have wanted to kill somebody and what they would do and so on, and making a joke of it. But nonetheless, in a world where domestic violence is rocketing, I want to be really careful about making jokes about all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a final thought as we wrap in about a minute or so, with this constant pushing of sensationalism, from a 40,000-foot view, what does that do to a society that's constantly receiving information in this panicked frame?
Well, I think what it does is it inoculates us to reality. And I think it means, from a Christian perspective as well, we miss the most astonishing good news. And I think we need to look at the details for God in this, we look for God in the small things in life, So you go out just now, you have food with somebody, you see a lovely flower. I'm here in Newcastle, and I go down to the beach or whatever, just the gorgeous beaches here and all that kind of stuff. And I think when we look for the sensational, it means we do not see God in the ordinary. And I think we should be looking for him in the ordinary. And as for the sensational, look, Christ is coming back. That's going to make everything else pale into insignificance, So we must be careful not to sensationalize things, and we must be careful to turn the attention towards Christ. That's what I would suggest.
Wonderful thoughts there, David Robertson. Thanks for joining us. And if you want to follow David online, you can visit him at his blog site, The Wee Flea, as in we as in WEE, theweeflea.com. David Robertson, thank you for joining us today.
Great to be with you guys.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.